Hey everybody, happy Tuesday to you. I have the most bizarre murder mystery tonight. One that is not so much who done it, but why didn't they charge him sooner done it? For instance, you get this luxury high-rise in Chicago. This beautiful woman found dead, missing a foot in the middle of a stairwell, 24 stories down. She'd been thrown down that stairwell. That guy on the right there would be her husband, right? Estranged. He lied to the police when they were investigating. Said, she was missing, I haven't seen her in a month. That's not what the video story tells us. So why was it they didn't arrest him? Not for that, anyway. And why is it he's got a mugshot and he's in jail and it has nothing to do with the murder? And is something going to happen with the murder, especially when he did this to her? Roll the tape. Yeah, that's what you call a domestic, and he's sitting in jail for this. But again, how about that whole murder thing, you know, where he lied? That's all coming up in just a moment. And also, for all you Luigi Mangione fans, there's another letter, or at least another portion of a letter. And this time he's talking about his favorite music. Why does that matter? It shouldn't. We don't typically care what inmates listen to on their tablets. But Luigi's very specific, and he has found a name that is perhaps even bigger than him, Tay-Tay. This is his newest music crush. How do I know? I'm going to read you the letter. And how do I know the letter is real? We did some forensics with a guy who stayed a long time in the same lockup and can fact check some of the details in the letter. All that's coming up in a moment as well. And then do you remember the Halloween prank that we showed you a couple weeks ago? At the time, we weren't aware it was a prank. In fact, police were looking for 3 people they considered to be dangerous. There they are, trying to look menacing out on the sidewalk, and it wouldn't mean much except for the fact that they then approached the door, each of them separately, menacing the homeowners inside, rattling the door handles and threatening them. Listen to what it sounded like and what it looked like.
Open the door! Open the door!
It got even worse than that, with the threat saying, either you open it or we're coming in. These guys didn't only rattle the door handles and bang on the door, they broke a few things in the backyard too until the police showed up and did a full-scale manhunt. The police worked 100 hours on this case, and I'm here to tell you tonight, they identified the masked men. Only they're not men, they're minors. And they were put up to it by someone inside the house, a connection to someone inside the house. Here's my question for you folks. What should happen to them? The minors that did it and the grown-ups that put them up to it. And maybe the bigger question, who should pay for the 100 man-hours that the police put into investigating what they thought were dangerous criminals? That's coming because I've got the police chief coming up on the program. Let's start here, though. I want to start in this horrifying discovery in that luxury high-rise in Chicago. It happened a year ago yesterday. Look at that building. That's the one right there. A resident in that building found a foot, clearly human, clearly severed from its owner in this stairwell. And then they found bloodstains on the walls and the floor and the railings, and several flights down, all the way at the bottom of the stairwell, was a body whose, face was down and was missing a foot. And it was clearly a woman. She was battered and had multiple skull fractures and rib fractures. Her name was Tracey, 36 years old, of New Buffalo, Michigan, whose only connection to that condo tower in Chicago's South Loop was her estranged husband, a man named Adam Beckerink. 47-year-old tax accountant Beckerink had reported Tracey missing just the day before that she was found, claiming that he had not seen his estranged wife in weeks and weeks. But the surveillance pictures told a different story. They never learn. Yeah, showed up on camera that the couple were actually together in that building just 2 days prior. So naturally, police hauled in Beckering for questioning. But they let him go after 48 hours without filing any charges, which was really odd since they didn't just have that obvious lie to go on. They had something else, too, something really violent. Back in 2023, Tracey had tried to get a restraining order against Adam, claiming 4 separate incidents of physical and verbal abuse. She ended up dropping her request, though, after Adam Beckering threatened to sue her for defamation. Didn't matter. He was later hit with a misdemeanor criminal charge of domestic violence and a felony charge for interfering with a 911 call, a 911 call being made by his wife, Caitlin.
No.
Can we, hold on. Can you not put me in the car, please? Can we just talk? Can we just talk, please? Please, can we just talk before you put me in the car? What the hell are you talking about? Wait a minute. Wait, before you, wait, before you put, wait! Get out of the car. Seriously!
What's your leg? I'll break it.
Listen to me!
Sit up.
Will you please?
Put the stuff out of his pocket.
You can't search me! You cannot search me! That's illegal! That's a illegal search! That's an illegal search! Can you just go talk to her, please? This is stupid! God! I'll rip your That's all this. That's my Please! What are you doing? You got everything, all right? Jesus Christ. Can I talk to you, please, before you shut this? Please, can I just talk to you? Can I just the car? Can I talk to you? Can I talk to someone here?
Wow, that sounds like somebody who knows the law, yelling, "You can't search me, you can't search me, this is an illegal search." Quite a fight he put up in that cruiser and beforehand, but in the end, he decided to plead no contest. Adam Beckering pleaded to those charges, and a week ago, he was sentenced for those. 93 days in jail and 2 years probation. And so, as I speak to you right now, Adam Beckering is sitting in jail, which is where he was yesterday when authorities in Chicago delivered some bad news. Yeah, they're charging him with first-degree murder. The first-degree murder of his wife. Not sure if this is a coincidence or karma, but this arrest warrant comes just exactly 1 year to the day that Caitlin Tracey was found dead in that stairwell. The warrant alleges that Adam Beckering picked his wife up, all 4 feet 11 inches and 103 pounds of her, and threw her over the railing of the stairwell 24 floors up. He did it allegedly 2 days before her remains were found. I'm joined now by Mary Norquell, reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times, who's been following this case from the start. Mary, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sort of trying to figure out why it's been a year since we're hearing about an arrest warrant. And I need to be clear. The police are saying they haven't even charged him yet. They've just issued the arrest warrant, and listed in the warrant is that he's wanted for first-degree murder. But I just don't understand why it's a whole year later with so much of that other stuff I just laid out.
Yes, obviously, very sad story, just tragic. And there are so many questions surrounding it, some of which you've mentioned, why it's been so long. There's a lot of factors at play here. Sometimes legal things just don't move very quickly. And in this case, he has not only legal cases now in Illinois, but also Michigan. And a lot of those court proceedings happened over the last year that could have had some impact on how long it took to, announce that they are bringing these charges, and a warrant is out for his arrest for first-degree murder of Caitlin Tracey. Another thing that we can't forget here is that it takes a lot for the state's attorney to bring charges for murder, especially first-degree murder. So, unless we are privy to that investigation, and we might be if the trial progresses, but unless we know that, there are going to be a lot of questions swirling around this case.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, I'm always aware that cops, need to have everything buttoned up before they charge and the clock starts ticking on prosecution. But man, I mean, they had the videotape of him lying to them about not having seen her in weeks, and Shazam, there he is on surveillance 2 days earlier. And I thought I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there were witnesses in that building who heard things. Do you know much about that part of the story?
So in the police reports from the initial, when the body was initially found a year ago, there were residents from the building that had said they had heard domestic disturbances. Michigan cops as well had said that their residence in that state was known for domestic disturbances. But as far as this specific incident, we have yet to hear about any witnesses coming forward.
There's another weird part of this story that I'm trying to get my head around. For a guy who is a lawyer, and albeit a tax lawyer, he certainly knows that he's got some criminal exposure here. His wife is dead. He's on camera with her 2 days prior, and, he's caught in a lie. And yet he, as I understand it, got into a pitched custody fight over her remains with her parents. Do I have that right? And what in God's green earth was going on there?
Yes, you have that right. So shortly after her death, her parents filed a petition to the court to essentially take custody of her remains, her body, from Adam Beckering, who was claiming spousal rights, according to the petition that her parents filed. They alleged that he was emotionally, physically, verbally abusive to her, and that he was withholding her body and her remains from them. And a judge in Michigan eventually ruled that the custody of her remains would go to her parents. And a Cook County judge here in Chicago upheld that ruling as well.
Is there anything to the timing of this arrest warrant being issued? Literally 1 year, almost to the hour, of her body being found.
Yeah, I mean, that's another question that I think a lot of us have, reporters included, and it kind of does go back to that same point of, people who are privy to the investigation will have so much more to say definitively than we will, but it does definitely raise some questions about the timing and also his sentencing in the domestic abuse case in Michigan.
So all told, I mean, you've been on this story for a long time. How does this murder case, and I'll call it a murder case instead of a murder charge, because he's got to be extradited after he's finished serving in Michigan, the domestic assault. How does this murder story, this murder case, stack up at this point against him? Is it looking like a bit of a slam dunk, or is this an uphill battle for prosecutors?
I mean, we are so early. He hasn't even been formally charged yet, as you said. So it's tough to say. But what I will say is there is definitely going to be a lot that comes out in discovery and in the early parts of the trial. If we do go to trial, we also have no idea how he'll plea at this point. So there's a lot of question marks, as I've said, and I think people will definitely be waiting with bated breath for some of the answers, especially her family.
Boy, I'll say, Mary Norquell, thanks so much for helping us sort of plod through this. It's just a weird one, but I definitely am going to cover it again. I'll give you a call as it moves forward.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Okay, I want to bring in retired FBI agent and current attorney Bobby Chacon, because Bobby, you and I have been at this game a long time, and it is weird when you have somebody caught in such a bald-faced lie, one that is as consequential as, I'm filing a missing persons report, I haven't seen her in weeks. Baloney, you're caught red-handed on video. Any idea why they didn't just slap him with the first-degree murder charge right then and there?
Sure, because that's not evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed her. I mean, it certainly makes him look guilty, and it's certainly going to be a piece of the story that prosecutors tell a jury eventually if it goes to trial. But that in and of itself is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt of murder. So they have to put a lot more work in, forensic evidence, physical evidence, other things that they have to put together, other than to connect with that lie that he told. The lie puts him dead square in the middle of the case. It puts him as suspect number one, and it certainly motivates the cops and the detectives to kind of go hard at him in the investigation.
Yeah, and then I'm sort of thinking about this timing, right? He's sitting pretty in a Michigan jail cell for a 93-day sentence, which is up in January. Is there, and I asked Mary this, but I'll ask you too, is there something to this sort of whimsical date, 1 year to the day that he faces the arrest warrant for murder? Or do you look at it from a detective's eyes as, the clock's running out. He's going to get out of jail, and they better, nail down this case before he decides to go to some country that doesn't have an extradition treaty?
Yeah, actually, I think January 3rd is when he is scheduled to be released from that charge he's serving in Michigan. And I can tell you that it's almost a as we get to the Thanksgiving holidays, which are just a few weeks away, and then December, in the courthouses, things slow down, things shut down, and people take vacations, right? People take holidays, and you don't want anything kind of interfering. You don't want anything dropped. So I'm sure they were looking at this, this 6 or 8 week period before Christmas and right after New Year's. It's hard to get things done sometimes, in government, and it's hard to get things done around a courthouse. So I think they wanted to file this. I'm not sure it was the 1 year anniversary, rather than we're coming up on this holiday period. Well, we got to get everything done now and make sure all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and this warrant is served. I wouldn't be surprised if they either arraign him via video from the jail in Michigan where he's incarcerated, or somehow extradite him temporarily to have his initial appearance in Chicago and then brought back for the remainder of his sentence. I think they want to lodge these charges. Like you said, he hasn't been officially charged yet. It's kind of semantics, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go really hard in trying to get those charges official.
So I'm going to ask our control room if they can play some of that video again of him being so belligerent with the police as they're trying to get him into the cruiser. And I don't know if we can line it up to that exact moment, but I had a bit of an epiphany as I was watching it. And I want you to take your detective hat off, your cop hat, and put on your lawyer's hat, because I feel like this video is going to play in his murder trial. Let me play a little bit more of it, and then I'm going to ask you my question about it on the other side. Take a look.
You're under arrest. Calm down. You need to calm down. Somebody called 911 and I heard you yelling for help.
Okay, so Bobby, listen to him. Right from the jump, he's telling these cops, get out of my house. No, no, no. This search is illegal. Let me just talk to her. Scream, scream, yell, yell, fight, fight. I'll listen a little.
Listen. I'll break it. Listen to me. Will you please?
Listen to me.
You can't search me.
Right? Listen to me. I'm right, you're wrong. And I guess this is the kind of thing that doesn't play well for a jury, right? They look at this stuff and they say, I completely believe that you're abusive. I believe that you abused your wife. I feel you were trying to abuse the cops. What do you do as an attorney with something like this in a trial where he's accused of murdering the woman he just beat up before this scene?
Can I talk to you, please, before
Yeah, clearly he's a bully. I mean, he's bullying the cops and he's in handcuffs and he's still bullying them. So he's a bully. I mean, it comes out very clear. If I was his defense attorney, I'd do everything I could to kind of get that suppressed and not have that shown to a jury, because it clearly shows, and not only shows up, but you hear her talk to him saying, calm down, you have to calm down. So she's the victim. And so now you have an interaction with him and the victim. And that can be really important to a jury to see how she's clearly in fear of him. She's trying to get him to calm down. He's in cuffs and he's still not calmed down. So it shows you the extent of which this guy can be a bully. And that's part of the charge of in this murder. He's charged with kind of a domestic violence murder, which is the ultimate act of being a bully.
Right. I think that video is what we call a bad fact. And I wonder if it'll get suppressed, because if it goes into the trial, I think he's cooked. Bobby Chacon, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks, Ashleigh. Thanks.
Still to come, Luigi Mangione speaks, or so we are led to believe. And you'll never guess whom Luigi name drops, supposedly in a letter from deep inside his infamous Brooklyn lockup. Here's a hint. Her fan base is even bigger than his fan base. Yes, I know. I already told you. It's Tay-Tay. But wait until you hear why he was busted hearing Tay-Tay and what happened after. Don't go anywhere. If I asked you to pick two names guaranteed to break the internet, if you'd put them together, you could do worse than Luigi Mangione and Taylor Swift. And that is not just a mental exercise, not anymore anyway, because a letter has surfaced, supposedly written by the alleged CEO killer, in which he confesses to being a Swiftie, or at least a dabbler. This is actually an addendum to the birthday letter that we saw from Luigi back in June. If you remember that one, when he turned 27, he listed 27 things he was grateful for. The new part of the letter says, and I quote, "Last week, I downloaded a bunch of Taylor Swift and Charlie XCX onto my tablet. I've never really listened to either of them, but some phony list of my favorite music circulated on social media. Rather than be a buzzkill and set the record straight, I figured I'd see what all the hype was about. So I'm walking laps on the top tier of my unit, listening to Cardigan by T Swift, when one of the other inmates, King, calls me over to see what I'm listening to. He scolds me for a while, then replaces all my music. Now I listen to Lil Durk." Luigi. The recipient of the letter says that they received that note on June 24th, but were very leery of sharing it, apparently until now. And if you're wondering whether it's legit, we're way ahead of you. Earlier today, we ran it by a former resident of the federal lockup in Brooklyn that Luigi calls home. Gene Borrello is an ex-mafia enforcer and a friend of the show. He was locked up at the MDC, same place. And he knows a thing or two about, quote, walking laps on the top tier of the unit and listening to music. Is that even possible? So here's what Gene had to say.
I believe that he did write that letter. He's definitely somebody that would write a letter like that. Like I said before in many interviews, I don't like his crimes. I don't like what he did, but he will get fans. He will get glorified for this crime. But if you see the way he labeled it, 1 through 27, whatever he did, it's like a sociopath almost. And like I said, he was telling the truth on one thing where he said he could walk miles and listen to these iPads because that unit 4 North is one of the only units in that building, I believe, with those iPads. When I was there, we were the only ones that had it, that you were able to buy them. The MP3 players, you can have them, but they don't sell them no more. So if you had them already, then that's fine. But if you break it, you can't get it again.
There you go. Right from inside, right? We also reached out to Luigi's attorneys, by the way, but we have not heard back. We do, however, expect to see Luigi in person when he's back in court on the 1st of December, so mark your calendar. Still to come, do you remember this trio of monsters caught on doorbell cam video in Virginia?
What I get you? Open the door! Who is it? Open up the door!
That was 2 weeks ago tonight, but now we know who they are. Police say they terrorized the people inside the house for 10 solid minutes, pounding on the door, jiggling the handle, and threatening to break in. It turns out it was indeed a prank that cost the police 100 man-hours. So should this trio be charged? Should they pay the police back? And just wait until you hear who put them up to it. The chief of police himself is live with me when we come back. People have ended up dead for a whole lot less than what 3 punks did in Alexandria, Virginia 2 weeks ago tonight. We got the ring cam video a few nights later, and while it might not have seemed quite so menacing at first, these guys here, they ended up dialing things up way too far. They started pounding on an unsuspected family's door, threatening to break in and kill them for 10 solid minutes.
Who is it? I want to get you. Open the door. Who is it? Open up the door. Hurry, make her wait inside. Open up the door. Who is it? Open up the door before we make our way inside.
So it got a lot worse than that, right? Each of them came up individually, menacing the door handle, banging on the door and threatening to break in if they wouldn't open the door themselves, right? So fearing for her life, the homeowner called her brother who showed up with a gun and then called 911. The tormentors fled before the police got there, but that wasn't the end of it. Investigators went to work, and now we know what they found. Are you ready? It was a prank on that house and on that family specifically. Here's Alexandria's police chief earlier today.
A significant break came after our first press conference. We received multiple tips that created valuable leads. Following those leads, investigators discovered that the three masked individuals were related to the victim. An adult female suspect later confessed that her and her two sons and her nephew, early in their teens, were responsible for approaching the home. In addition, there were two adults and a child in the immediate area filming or standing by for the conclusion of this event. In total, there were 3 adults and 4 children involved. What we now know was a prank.
You heard that right. The homeowner's cousin and her 2 sons and a nephew dressed up and terrorized her relatives. A grown-ass woman put these kids up to it, minors between 14 and 16 years old. Nobody in that house had a clue, but police spent more than 100 man-hours investigating this crime because they thought they were dealing with violent criminals. So what happens now? Will the woman responsible for setting this baloney act up be charged? Will the kids be charged? And who's going to pay the bill for all those man-hours the police wasted? I'm joined now by the chief of the Alexandria Police Department, Tariq McGuire. Chief, thanks so much for being here. It just boils my blood to see, A, what this family went through, B, that a man showed up with a gun prepared to defend this house, and that you and your team had to spend 100 hours trying to figure out who these bozos were. Are they going to be charged?
Well, number one, thank you for having me on tonight. You know, that's a question that many have asked in our community. Are these persons going to be held liable? And I think in this case, as the police department, our number one goal is to act in the best interest of the victim. And in this particular case, as you just talked about earlier, the victim really is related to the suspects in this case. And unbeknownst to the victim, had no idea who these persons were. And so as we talk through this case, not only with our Commonwealth attorney and talk through it with the victim, I think a human perspective leaned in from the victim's perspective, not wanting to press charges or proceed forward with charges against our family member. Now, here's an interesting thing about the Commonwealth of Virginia. Still, if a victim does not desire to prosecute, the Commonwealth attorney could move forward with charges in this specific case. But collectively, again, we thought through this process and said to ourselves, how does the victim feel? And that was the largest consideration in coming to a final decision.
I thoroughly understand that. We, in the business of law, we call them hostile witnesses. There's a crime committed against everybody here, mostly the family inside that house, but the people in that community who are paying the tab for the 100 hours of police work that, A, was wasted, and B, could have been used elsewhere, helping real people who were undergoing, real threats to be, kept safe. In that respect, shouldn't the mother who put her 2 sons up to this and her nephew face some kind of consequence, like a financial bill or something? Like, I'm looking at this thinking, if these kids are 14 and 16, endangering children, uttering threats, destruction of property, false reporting, lying to police, and all of the above. But shouldn't she face something, if not just to send a message to the community? You can't screw around like this.
So, you share the same sentiments that I shared when I looked at this case. And again, in the best interest of justice, we made that decision. But, I really framed this up as a moral failure. You made a very valid point. Here you are with a parent that is encouraging their children to act in this behavior, whether it was a prank or not being a prank. Something that has been highlighted time and time again, that this really could have resulted in a serious injury. As you pointed out, we see a family member that comes up with a gun, and if those persons are still there on that scene, it could have been absolutely something horrific that turned into a prank, ultimately coming to where someone was seriously injured or hurt. And so, I want to send a clear message as a police chief, especially as we approach Halloween this season. Our cops, our team will be out, and we will be looking for any type of suspicious behavior. We are communicating with the public this week, specific to here in Alexandria, because we know that people like to do copycat events such as this. But in this particular fashion, we've been out in the front talking to the community, understanding what people's needs are, because we want people to feel safe. And believe me, that as we looked at this case, I wanted some level of accountability, but again, trying to work in the best interest of the victim in this case. And I hope this family takes a clear lesson learned from this, and this behavior does not become a repetitive cycle.
Yeah, I was thinking these kids should be in a Scared Straight program, but it's really the mother who put them up to it who should be in the Scared Straight program. Chief Tarek McGuire, good to have you. Thanks so much for being on the show. I hope it's not the last time. Look forward to seeing you again sometime.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a safe Halloween as well. I'm glad you gave that message. Folks, don't do this stuff. People have guns. This could have turned out so horrible. Coming up next, thousands of people rolled right over her body for hours with no idea that she was dead and naked inside that duffel bag. This happened just blocks from Manhattan's famed Fifth Avenue and just beneath the commuter trains that are famous for bringing people to and from the suburbs. Who was the mysterious Jane Doe under that sheet? And more importantly, who left her on the sidewalk like that, just blocks from some of the richest people in the world? That's next. Whether you live in New York City or you wouldn't be caught dead there, Park Avenue means the same thing. It means money and wealth and prestige. Not a place where people are caught dead. Certainly not caught dead in a duffel bag. But just before 7 last night, about an hour after sunset, somebody picking up trash at the corner of Park Avenue and 125th Street found a naked dead body on the sidewalk. You heard me, naked dead body on the sidewalk near Fifth Avenue. She was a young woman, and her body had been put into a garbage bag that was stuffed into a green duffel bag. That duffel bag then cinched up with a drawstring. Whether the woman died in that bag on the spot or was dumped there is one of many still unanswered questions. Another one being, who was she? Oh, and there's who did this to her as well. Police don't even know her name yet. And the scene itself gives me chills. It's a commuter rail stop for trains running into and out of the city. I have been through this a million times, and all day I've been thinking about the thousands of people who were riding the trains and passing right over this dead woman on their way to work and maybe home again, right? To the suburbs, the safe suburbs, having no idea that she was right there below them. Standing by for us right there tonight is Caitlin Becker, senior correspondent for the New York Post. Caitlin also hosts the New York Postcast podcast, and she's a great friend of the show. Good to see you. So, Caitlin, it just gave me such a sad feeling today when I heard about this story. It's so close to Fifth Avenue. It just didn't sound like the kind of, thing that you'd hear would be happening, especially with all those commuters riding above her.
Yeah, Ashleigh, people who've never even been to New York know Park Avenue, then it's Madison Avenue, then it's Fifth Avenue. Those are all places people are familiar with. If you keep going west, you hit Columbia University. It's not a story you expect to tell standing in front of where I'm standing. I mean, look, there's lights strung up all behind me. This is a place where in just a few weeks they're going to be selling Christmas trees. And right over there, just between these two pillars, is where you are looking at that body in the bag, in the trash bag, in the duffel, just laying there. So it's a really unexpected place. And you mentioned a few times that there's a commuter rail. You might actually hear it during our interview. It runs right over top of my head. And the entrance is at the other end of this block. So you have people, every time you hear that train coming up and down those stairs, having no idea that that woman's corpse was just sitting here in a pile.
Do you have any idea how long she'd actually been there before someone made the discovery?
We do, Ashley, not very long. The Post spoke to someone who lives nearby and works for a drug counseling center who actually was familiar with the woman and said that she saw her earlier that day and she seemed okay. So if we're talking about the morning of Monday and then the body is found at 7 p.m., that's a pretty tight window for how long she could have been there. And I mean, Ashley, just getting an idea of how lit up and bright this place is, you have construction on both sides. As I said, all of these lights are here and it's almost 11 o'clock at night, and we've seen people milling about pretty much the entire time we've been here. So it's a pretty high trafficked area.
So I know how New York works. I lived there for years, and I've worked there for decades, right? One neighborhood can be so expensive. You could be paying $20,000 a month in rent. And then just 3 blocks over, there can be a homeless drug problem. Can you give me a sense of where we are in the scope of that spectrum, where this actually happened? Because Park Avenue is, you have one image in your mind, and that is not this.
Yeah, exactly. We're on the latter end of that spectrum. But as you said, the neighborhoods are so jammed together. I don't live too far from here. The Met, all of the ritzy areas of the Upper East Side are just below this neighborhood. So you cross up a little while and you hit a more desolate, a more rundown area. This is an area that is known for drug use, for homeless, but it's also an area that's getting a bit gentrified. And you see more and more people moving in that necessarily are, you know, college educated and they have 9-to-5 jobs. So there's the train running above me. So there you go. You're going to get these types of commuters coming on and off the train in this area. And like I said, it's pretty well lit. And Ash, just not 4 blocks in this direction down Park Avenue, there's a police station. So pretty much where we're standing, you've got cops located on just a few blocks here, and they've been patrolling the area, of course, more today in light of the incident, but not 5 blocks behind me.
Can your cameraman pan up a little bit? That's my train, by the way, that I think just rolled over top of you. Just like tilt
This
up a little
up
so
here,
that they
yep.
can see. Yeah, so they literally were rolling right over where that corpse was. This is such a sad story for this woman. There's some word that folks in the neighborhood know who she might be, even if the police don't, right?
Exactly. Someone that we spoke to. So from what we understand, who the Post spoke to, she's around 20 years old. She is, as I said, known in the area. There's a park right down, maybe a block or 2 that way, Marcus Garvey Park. That is where people say that she lived. As far as we understand it, she was unhoused. She was a drug user, but was frequently in this area. And as I said, someone saw her earlier in the day, and then this happens just a few hours later. So that is where my reporter brain kicks in and thinks to themselves, okay, there's a drug epidemic in this country. We know that. Doesn't matter if you're in New York, you're in Kentucky, you're in Iowa. It happens. Someone dies of perhaps a drug overdose, which is the working theory. Why then is that person put in a trash bag, put in a duffel bag, and then dumped in a high-trafficked, highly lit area? That's the mystery here, because that doesn't happen, not here in New York, I don't know where that happens that doesn't get our attention.
Right.
To go through the process of stuffing someone in 2 separate receptacles and highly likely moving her here. Someone that I spoke to around the corner said, oh yeah, something probably happened in Marcus Garvey Park, and then they moved her. Why? That's the mystery.
Caitlin Becker, well, I know if anyone's going to solve it, you're going to have the information first. It's so good to see you again, friend. Thank you for this.
Thanks, Ash.
All right, make sure you catch Caitlin's New York Postcast podcast. She publishes a new episode every single day wherever you get your podcasts. And coming up after the break, pranks don't generally end well on this show. Just ask those 3 idiots in the Halloween masks, right? But in a moment, a guy who's not getting off quite so easy. This fella says it was only a joke when he showed up at his ex-girlfriend's shower naked, holding a knife and wearing panties on his head. If it was such a funny prank, how come she ended up in a chokehold? That's next. So, finding a man standing in your shower naked and wielding a knife, that is a horror movie cliche. But for Haley Leggins, it was no movie. She returned home in South Carolina one night to find the naked man with the knife wearing panties as a mask to shield his face. And when he lunged at her, she grabbed at the knife. That's when a fight broke out. She says he pinned her to the ground and began choking her, and that the attack only ended when she was able to rip the panties off her attacker's face, revealing this guy, saying it was her ex-boyfriend, an ex whom she'd been fighting a stalking problem. She says he'd stalked her and obsessed over and over, even loitering near her while she worked as a nanny. She filed a lawsuit against this man, Jackson Arnold, last month. But when the incident happened last May, he was actually charged with assault and battery, burglary, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Police say he called the whole thing a prank. But at this point, Leggins' lawsuit is the least of his worries. Pranks, folks, aren't pranks when they involve weapons or frightening people to a point where you might have to get the police involved. Seems to be a theme of this show tonight. So please take the Alexandria Police Chief's advice. Don't do it. Cuomo's next.